Hello knitting friend and welcome to my knitting tutorial on totally plain easy vanilla socks top down. You may have knitted socks before, you may have not, and this video is basically mainly for my friends who need the videos just to remember how to do the socks. So shout out to Natalia, Tatiana, Marina, Alina, Anya, and Alina. Miss you. I hope you're knitting well. This material that I'm using, well, actually, first the needles. You can use any kinds of double pointed needles, DPNs, which means that they're not circular, and you can knit from both ends. And these are 3.5 millimeter and 20 centimeter long. Some people like it more if it's 15 centimeter long. Choose your own thing. You can always see from the yarn what they are suggesting for the needle. So here is very basic sock yarn. Even in the image it has socks. So this is Novita Finnish brand, 7 Brothers, 100 gram skein, and it has 200 meters, 218 yards per 100 grams, which means it's aran weight. If you're thinking about how thick the yarn is, it's called aran weight when it's about 100 grams per 200 or 200 meters per 100 grams. It has 75% wool, and it does have some plastic material because it has 25% polyamide, but that's needed for the durability of the sock. There are other materials that some other sock yarns use that are plant-based, so you can also look for those if interested. So here it has this information that for socks you should use 3.5, or suggestion at least is 3.5 millimeter or US 4 or Japanese 4 to 5 size needles. And if you're knitting something else like a shirt, it also gives you this kind of gauge, like basic gauge. May not be your gauge, so you have to measure it, but kind of the medium gauge for people to get with the 4 millimeter needles or 5 millimeter needles. So even though in this image here it kind of has needles with the ends that you could not knit from, please use the double pointed needles. Okay. This is good sock yarn, basic. It's even washable, so you can wash it in 40 Celsius. And yeah, and for this same manufacturer, I believe, they also make this a bit cheaper yarn, even cheaper yarn. My Home Living, it's sold in city markets and Kmarts and something like that in Finland. It says sock yarn, sukkalanka. It's 150 grams, so it's a bit of a bigger skein, but it also then it has the same thickness because for the 150 grams it has 300 meters of yarn. It's basically the same yarn, and you can buy this also, either or. They look very similar, so you can even combine. Okay, so let's get cracking. Okay, so take 2 needles. Take about 80 centimeters of the yarn from the skein. It really is better to have too much than too little at this point. It doesn't matter if you have 10 centimeters extra at the end. First, make a loop that makes your first stitch. How I do it normally is that I just have the end of the yarn here. I have 2 fingers. I cross over them and have this like an X here. Turn around, and then coming from here under, pull the backyard and have a loop, and then tighten it up. That's it. And by the way, for this video, at least I'm going to try to make you these kinds of marks at the bottom where you can find, for example, this cast on where we are now, then the leg of the sock, the heel flap, and so forth. So hopefully we can do that so that you can always skip to the part where what is needed for you at the time. So now you have this first stitch on your needles, and I normally make cast on 1 stitch extra from what is needed. And for this Aran yarn regular basic sock, we need 48 stitches. So here we go. From below to the back yarn and go over it, and then go under this one and pull tight. From the under the first yarn, go over the last yarn, peek under this one and pull. I'll keep doing this for a few stitches and let's see, you can get the hang of it. Try to make it so that it's really loose in between the stitches here, so that it's a stretchy stretchy cast on. Okay, you keep at it. Maybe this is something that you remember that you've done before. Okay, this is how you keep on doing the 48 stitches. I'll now show also a bit of a stretchier way of starting the cast on, and particularly for those who want to try something new. So here you go under the both of these, you dive into the loop here, then you go pick up that one and you twist the loop on your thumb and you dive away from it. Let's do that again. So same beginning as for the other one, but dive under both of the first ones, go into this loop that you have in front of the thumb towards you, go around the back yarn as if you did in the other one. But now for you to dive back into this thumb yarn, you can twist your thumb a little and then go back and come here. You actually just back up into the same way that you first did on your first go. So under the two, into the thumb, towards you, go grab the back yarn, and then now you should dive back in here. So you can also do it like this, but I like to do it so that I twist. Well, actually you don't do it quite like that. You have to come this way. Hold on. So under the two, into the thumb, towards you, grab the back one, and now twist your thumb so that you see it from the other side of the thumb, go through and again towards you, and let the yarn tie itself. Under the two, into the thumb, towards you, around the back one, then come all the way to the front, twist the thumb, and then go into that loop and come towards you and tighten up. And this is my way of making, I know that this one must have a name, don't remember the name, sorry. If I can remember it or find it before I get this video out, I will write it here. What is the name of these two different, I think the first one is the basic long tail cast on, and this one must have a different name. Okay, keep on at it and make 49 stitches. So when you have 49 stitches, so the 48 that is needed plus one extra on these two needles, that also makes sure that when you're making it on two needles, it makes it more stretchy at the leg of the sock. Then divide these all on 4 needles. So you can pull out the one, but be careful not to drop them from the other end. Pull out that one needle and then just slip the first, let's say because we have the extra stitch here, slip the first 13 to this needle, and then always 12, 12, and 12 to the next needles. When you have all 4 needles, the 12 plus the first one has the 13, then make sure that these bottoms of the stitches are all to the center of your work. And once that's there, then you can start working on the, sorry, my camera seems to want to again focus to the lower part. You can start working on this gap here. So why do I do the extra stitch is that I want to, with that extra stitch, I want to kind of glue these two together. I put that very first stitch that doesn't have any yarn hanging from it to the needle number 4. So you can think that this is number 1, 2, 3, 4, because you always work in a round 1, 2, 3, 4. So from the first needle, you put the first stitch to the number 4 needle to the back of it. And then the stitch that has all this yarn hanging from it, you have to pull that over the first one. So you tug underneath it. Hold on, let the camera have some time. Tug underneath it, and then you just carefully pull it over so that you still leave that one other stitch on the needle. So you pull it over and off the needle. So now you have one stitch less, and by tightening these yarns that are underneath, you can tighten this gap a little, and then you won't have a same kind of a gap than in some other cases where you didn't do this. Now make sure you start knitting with the yarn thread that goes to the skein, not the one that finishes right away. And what I normally do is I start twisting this end of the yarn around this working yarn, so that by the time that we are around this first round, we've already kind of tucked that yarn and hid it into the sock without needing to use any needlework. So with a working needle, you do one knit. So knit is where you just go and grab the yarn from behind, and then you do one purl. Let's do again. One knit. I believe you know knits and purls already, but in case you don't, I'll do it really slow. From purl comes from behind the yarn, from the end of the needle to the stitch, and then goes and grabs the yarn from behind and dives back into the stitch and behind it. Again, one knit and one purl from behind, go grab the yarn, dive back and have the stitch. Okay, one knit and one purl. And if you notice, I didn't keep on doing the twisting of the yarn here. I'll do that on the second layer. I can leave it on the second layer too, to tuck it in there so that it's easier to follow this, what am I doing here, and not having the yarn going back and forth. Oh, sorry for the camera thing. Okay, so you keep at this, and since we have 12 stitches on every needle, you should end always with a purl stitch. And that's a good way, because purl stitch as the last stitch of the needle and knit stitch as the first stitch of the needle seems to be also tying up this gap between the needles. And when we knit, I normally pay attention to, I don't knit with my needles level. Do you notice how straight up my needles are? Let's put this a bit more down. So I knit so that my needles are not like this. They're not facing one another like this. They're more like, I don't know, an A shape. And then from that, I find it's easier to tuck the yarn so that it's not too loose, and to work underneath the needle that is on the left. I kind of do all my work here on the right hand side or underneath the needle that is holding the stitches. So the working needle just kind of is actually doing the work, and the, hold on, let the camera find us again. Woohoo! And that's how it goes. Okay, so keep at it, whichever length you want for the leg of the sock. You keep doing this ribbing of knit, purl, and you can start seeing these stitches on the second layer. So always when there's this burl pump, you need a purl. When there's this kind of a V shape, a real loop, that is your knit stitch. Purl, knit, purl. And you start seeing after the couple of first rows where to have each stitch, and that kind of helps you also. Okay, happy knitting the leg. I hope you've had fun knitting your leg of the sock. I think I had a shortcut. I'm faster knitting just knitting and not knitting and purling. So I did maybe 6 rows of knit and purl ribbing. Then I just did some knitting, and then it's called stockinette when it's just plain knitting in a round. And then I knit maybe 8 rows of ribbing again. So that kind of comes to the ankle of the sock. I think this is my favorite part of the sock, the heel flap. And the heel flap will be on these 2 needles. They will grow into being a flap here. And these 2 needles on the back will be just left in peace for the time being. And to make it easier, I normally just don't use both of these needles. I combine them on one needle, particularly when we're 1 or 2 rows in. It's kind of fidgety to have these 2 here. So I just put this on one consecutive needle and then keep at it. When we're on this outside of the sock, every time that we're going from here to here on the outside, we're knitting. And then when we turn the sock and work on the inside of the sock and we're working on this side, then we purl. So on the outside, it's knitting. On the inside, it's purling. And it ends up looking like stockinette on the outside. Another way of doing the inside is so-called strengthened heel flap. And that's what I'm going to do because it's actually even easier than just purling. So since we now have to turn and just get on the inside, if you just make it plain, you just purl. Purl across these 24 stitches that you have here. But if you want to, you can skip every other purl stitch. In any case, for the first one on the edge, so that you have an easier task later on to pick up some stitches, always for the first one, just slip it. But when you're on the purl side, start it as if you were starting a purl stitch. This is very important. Go from the back of the yarn, go into the stitch, as if the beginning of the purl stitch, and now slip it to the other needle and bring the yarn to the right place. I'll do that again. So, because this is very important, slip the first stitch, but not just like this so that you would leave the yarn on the back or something. Just always go from the back of the yarn into the stitch from the end of the needle, and then slip it to the other needle and then bring the yarn here. That way you'll get a nice beautiful edge. Okay, and now the second stitch, so that is a purl, regular purl. Then the third one, just slip it as if you did the first one. Just remember when you slip it that you go from behind the yarn and you leave the extra yarn from to the front, which is actually the inside of the sock. Second one, purl. The fourth one. So it's always pick up and purl. Pick up and purl. Pick up and purl. This way you don't need to purl more than every other stitch. You kind of start the purl, but then you don't. You just go to the next one and then you purl. And because again, even number of stitches, you should have pick up, purl. So you should end with a purl stitch. And then you can leave this one needle out and continue with the same working needle so that you combine these 2 needles at the back. So this one was purled. So the next one is picked. Just go from behind the yarn, pick it up, purl, pick up, purl, pick up, purl, pick up, purl, pick up, purl. Always after the purl, tuck a little so that you don't have a loose heel. And you should end up with a purled stitch at the end. That way your first one was picked or slipped and the last one is actually handled so that it's purled. Then you turn around And again, we're just working on this side of the sock. And now that we're on the outside, it's all knitting. But remember again, the first stitch needs to be picked up. And now that we're on the knitting side, start it as if you were going to knit it. Just like you did the purl. So start it as if you're going to knit it and then slip it on to the next needle. And then just keep on adding. Add it. So keep on knitting. Then you knit through this whole 24 stitches. Okay, now we're at the end of the first knit side. So this one was slipped. All the other stitches on this side were knitted. And so was the last one too. Then I turn, put the working yarn to the back, and the first one is always slipped. So from the back of the yarn, behind the yarn, into the needle stitch, and slip it to the other needle, bring the yarn back, and then purl. Oh, sorry for shaking the camera. Let me get that out of the way. So then you continue. Slip, and you notice that you don't even have to do much to the purled one because your yarn is already in the right place when you slip it like this. Slip, purl, slip. Your needle is already behind the yarn when you continue to the purl. Slip, purl, slip, purl. Keep at it, and once you come to the end, then you turn and then you knit. And remember again to pick up the first, to slip the first stitch as if you were going to knit it. Okay, so the last couple of stitches picked and purled on this side. Then we turn around. Remember always to kind of pay attention also to these needles, that they stay in place and don't slip out and drop off something. Okay, the beginning of the knit side, we're on the outside. So slip as if to knit it. Like this, and then keep knitting. And some people ask, how long is the heel flap? And I always say that it is as long as you have stitches on the heel flap. So in this case, we have 24 stitches on the whole heel flap on the width of it. So if you notice, when we're doing this slipping on the back side, you have two sizes of stitches here. You actually have these longer stitches. So we already have like 1, 2, 3, and here you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually what we've done here, but with the time that we've done 1 here, we've done 2 here. So if you have, this is still a purl stitch here. But if you look at this, knit stitch, and you start calculating how many you have at some point, you should have these long ones, as many as on one needle, so 12, or these small ones, as many as you have on these 2 needles of the heel flap, so 24. You can also calculate the long ones from the side. Okay, so keep at this, knitting on this side and purling on the inside, or slip and purl if you want to make the so-called strengthened one. Okay, see you once you have enough rows. Okie dokie, welcome back. So, in case you did the slip and purl, you should now have these kinds of longer stitches, and you should have 12 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12th is on the needle. And in case you did this, you also would have on the inside these slipped pieces of yarn that are the ones where you just kind of slip the stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 times these kinds of yarns that are there. Or on the side stitches, you should have 12. No matter if you did this or not, the side stitches, because you do have to slip them in both, you should have 12 on the side. I have now finished this on the side where I've knitted the last row. You can also do it so that you do the other way around, but let's do it this way now, so that if you happen to end it with at the end of the purl row, just stop the video and still knit to this end, so you're at the same spot and it's easier to see what we're going to do. This is now the whole heel flap, and what we now need to do is we need to turn it. So I'll show you another sock. So here's a sock with a heel flap, and we have these stitches here on hold. We've not done this part. We have not done this part, and what we need to do next is this turning, this kind of underneath the heel flap. And if you look at the whole flap, it's about 1/3 of the width of the whole heel flap that we need in the middle. So the flap is done all the way up here. We don't need to work on the side stitches. We only need to extend the ones in the very middle. And what we're going to do is we take 1/3, so 24 stitches, which means we have 3 times 8. 2, 4, 6, 8 here. These are our right side stitches. Then we have 8 in the middle. 2, 4, 6, 8 in the middle. And then you have 2, 4, 6, 8 on the left. And because we don't work on these, we need to bind them together with the center stitches. So we keep on working on these center stitches back and forth. At the end of the center stitches, we always knit together the last center stitch and the first side stitch. So these two are knit together. Then on the next row, we have that together knitted stitch, and then we will knit it together on the next one, and so forth. So gradually, these stitches from the left will disappear. On the purl side, we will also, at the end of the center stitches, we have 8 on the left, if we think about it from the outside, and we have the center stitches, and we have the 8 on the side here. When we come across the middle to the last center stitch, we purl it together with the first stitch of the side. On this side, you just purl them together. On this side, if you want to make it pretty, you SSK them together, which means, or what you can do is you knit them together from the back. Let's do that. If you're really already advanced on the knit side, SSK, so slip, slip, knit them together. But if you've not done that before, then just knit them together on the back, and I will show you how that is done. So to calculate, we have to purl, or if you did this, you can still continue doing the slip, purl, slip, purl, slip, purl, until you've done the side ones and to the last of the center. So because 8 and 8 would be 16, but we need the 16th stitch to be purled together. We do 15 and then we stop. Okay, so what I do is, the first one is slip as if I purl it. So from behind the yarn to the stitch and then purl. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So those are the stitches on the side. I'll come back to them later. 9, 10, or let's call them center stitches. First 2, third, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is slipped, but I'm not going to work the 8th one yet. And then I check 2, 4, 6, 8. Yes, I have 8 side stitches and the last one from the center. And now I just purl these two together. Needle to the back of the yarn, pick them both up at the same time, and I go and pick up the yarn. That's a bit fidgety. You could also help to bring the yarn to the front and then pull through the both of them, and I purled together 2 stitches. Now I have 2, 4, 6, 7 left on that side. Now, important, I don't keep working on these. They're left alone. I turn and I'm on the right side of the sock. Put the working yarn to the back of the work. And now I knit the center stitches except the last one. But again, slip the first one as if to knit it. Becomes more beautiful. Slip it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not working the last one, the 8th one. I'm leaving it there and calculating 2, 4, 6, 8 on this side. These two, the last center stitch, first side stitch, need to be knit together. But to make it beautiful, I go from the end of the, I work on the back side of the stitches and knit them together. Okay, let the camera get a hold of that. So I knit them together like this from the back of the stitches. There. And now you can see that there's a small gap here between the center and the side stitches. 7 side stitches left. And once I start working this way on the back, also here will be a gap. Now I'm not going to work on these. Remember, they're side stitches. So again, I just turn and I work only on the center stitches. And no matter if you're doing the strengthened one or regular purling, pick the first one, slip the first one as if to purl it. So from behind the yarn into the stitch and put it on that side, and then work the center stitches until the last one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Slipping that one. See, there's a gap, and these last center stitch, first side stitch, I will purl them together like that. Here we go. Not working anymore on the side stitches. There's now 6 left. 2, 4, 6. Turning. I hope you're knitting at the same time. Then pick up the first one as if to knit it. We're on the knitting side. So I'm going to just slip it on the other needle. Then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have a working yarn twisted around my thing. I'm at 7. 7 stitches in the middle worked. First one was slipped. 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8th one. And you can see there's a small gap between that one and the side ones because we worked on this. And again, those 2, I will knit them together from the back of the stitches. That way the stitch leans to the left. You can start seeing this kind of leaning to the left. And it's beautiful. And you get that kind of a side thing. And then again, turn around. And keep working like this. Keep working the 7 center stitches of the 8. And then always on this side, you purl them together. The last center stitch and the first side stitch. And on the knit side, you knit them together from the back of the stitches. And then always turn. Do not work the side stitches more than just that one, combining it here. And you keep working this until you are done. You don't have side stitches left. And remember to be careful at the last ones because you easily drop the needle when there's only one stitch on the needle or something on the other side. So this is how it's done. Here I could show the SSK. So if you are okay with this, you could also slip, and knit together. So that turns the stitch. So you first slip this one and you slip the second one, and now you knit them together. You kind of put them back to the left hand needle and you knit them together from the back of the stitch. Just twists the stitch a bit differently, but doesn't make a big difference to what you were doing before if you look at them. Okay, keep at it until you have no stitches left on the sides. Be careful when you have only a couple of stitches left on the side so that you don't drop the needles. Good luck. Okay, no more stitches on the sides. Only 8 stitches in the center. See what you've done? You've made a heel turn. That wasn't that difficult, was it? And now is the only part where you need to actually pick up stitches from your knitting. And this is where you made that. If you roll this kind of side with your fingers so that you can see the last edging, those stitches that are like V's, the last shaping of that, go on the other side, also roll it out and see the last, the side of it where you have these V's. You should pick them up with your needle. I'll show you how. And then always kind of at the change of that needle and this needle here, kind of just imagine that you're making up a couple of stitches from this corner here. You can pick them up any way you would like, just kind of extra stitches, which will then disappear on the next couple of rounds. That kind of takes care of a hole and you don't need to needlework at the end, anything. So what I normally do is I turn these stitches so that I can see them. And it's now a bit difficult because I have to look into this from my camera. Or actually I'm just filming this with an old phone, so bear with me. Okay, I think that's the first one. It doesn't really matter. But then when you start rolling, just kind of put the needle in here and pick it up. Put the needle in the next one, pick it up. Your yarn may be even more visible than mine. But just kind of put your needle into the V and pick it up. I'll show you another way from the other side. So this is on this end. How many do I have now? 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay, let me look at it more carefully. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I may manage to have 13 from this kind of line here, there. And then I'll just kind of fidget. I'll just kind of pick up maybe that one as one. I can just turn it a bit like this. That will be one stitch. And maybe I'll pick up something from the inside. Maybe that one. That maybe pulls a bit. So maybe another one. Let's take a yarn from there. That pulls a bit too. Hold on. Oh, I lost that one. But to make kind of an idea here that you can actually just kind of make it up, I think that would be good. So there's a couple of extra stitches from here. You can also fidget around and try and figure it out so that it doesn't really, there's a better one, show as much of anything. But to have 13 to 15 stitches here on this side, that's good. Okay, let's go to the other side. So I need another needle. Where's my needle? There. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to pick them up from, so that I'm not going into the V, but I'm actually going on the inside of the V. Let's take those first couple. Well, let's take one from here, like an extra one, and an extra one from there. I'll see how that goes. I'll come back to this later and see if I can find another extra one from this side. Maybe that one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and I'm just kind of rolling with my one finger this last edge to be visible, and then I go behind it like this. So you can either go to the center of it and to either side of it, but you'll find the way that suits you the best. Okay? So keep at it until you are at the top of the sock. Just always pick up the similar looking yarn from the same side so that it's consistently the same. Okie dokie. Let's count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Well, I have many. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I can even drop one of these off because I don't need that many extras. Let's drop that one from the middle. That one. 15. Good amount. Okay. And now your working yarn is here. I suggest that because this heel is kind of halfway through your, kind of, if you think that your round around the sock starts from the middle of the heel, to move these 4 stitches to this needle. So then you can comfortably start knitting from here. So let's see, these 4 stitches from the heel go to this side. Okay, so now that side is really long. It has the 15 plus the 4. And then this one here is at the place where I can then continue knitting. And I should knit 1 round. So after I've done this, picking up the stitches, knit 1 full round and pay attention, because in this case, the way I picked up the stitches here happens to twist the bottom of this stitch when I knit it regularly. See how I knit it? And it seems to have like a twist at the bottom of the, like an X at the bottom of this stitch that we picked up. It has these. And in some cases, when you knit it, it might look like it's a hole. If this happens, just choose to knit that stitch from the back of the stitch. From the back leg of the stitch. And then you can have the twist. Okay, so keep on knitting. And it may be that on this needle, you have them already the correct way, so that you can just regularly, carefully knit this round. But then the other ones on the other side, pay attention. Do they leave a hole when you knit them, or do they twist from the bottom? So, because that's a big difference to how then that part of the sock looks like. Let me show it to you from the earlier sock. Just a sec. Let me finish these last. Oh, this yarn is a bit splitty here. I like these sharper needles, but then sometimes that means that the needles go through the yarn, and that's not good. That is not good at all. There. Okay, the last one is a bit, I'll have to fix that one. That needs to be knit from the back. Can you tell? Hold on, let's fix that so that you see how I'm fixing it. So I go back to that knit stitch, and now I knit it from the back. And if even that one looks, well, now it twists. Now it twists the bottom of the needle, the stitch. Okay, and if you look at this sock that was made earlier, and you look at these stitches, you can even see this kind of twisted line here, because the bottoms of these stitches are knitted, twisted. The same on the other side. And if you don't pay attention, you might pick them up so that they actually are holes and not these crossed stitches. So pay attention, knit 1 round. See you then. I decided to show you how my knitting is going on the other side of the sock. So this one we knitted earlier, then I knit across these 2 needles that were earlier just having a break. And when I come to the other side, if I decided to knit it regularly like this, it would totally turn into a hole. See? So I do have to knit it from the back. So I put my needle inside the stitch, and I take the back of the needle and I knit it from there. So hold on, that needle is kind of in the way. So in all of these stitches, I need to go to the back of the stitch, and this might be a bit fidgety at the beginning, but just be careful on this first row to knit them so that they then have these twists at the bottom of the stitch. And that's far better than having holes. Also a bit more durable when the yarn crosses like that and not having holes in there. I don't think those holes will be big. They would. If you end up having the holes, don't worry about it, because, and sometimes picking this needle, this stitch up and get it from the back. This is what I do. I take the front leg, I go around the needle, and then I knit it from the back. Show you again. I'll pick up the front leg, I go around and knit it from the back. Take the front leg, go around, up and over, and then knit it from the back. Take the front leg, up and over, and knit it from the back. Just totally depends. And then you have the 4 stitches from the middle that were the heel stitches, and those you can knit regularly, and we're not doing the skipping of any or slipping any stitches anymore, so you can just concentrate on knitting. Okay, so from here on we've now knitted 1 round, and this is the side where somehow it should have as little number of stitches as these 2 that were here. So 12, 12, but here 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19, because we also had the heel stitches from the center. So 19 stitches. And now it depends on your liking. Always the decreases where you reduce the number of these stitches happen on the first needle at the end, the last 2 stitches before the very last stitch. So this one we knit regularly because that then combines it nicely to the next needle stitches. But the second and the third last stitch, these are the ones that we knit together. And then we knit regularly these 2. And on the beginning of this one, so that it's on the same place, the first one is again knit regularly, but then the second and the third one are knit together from their backs so that they lean to the left. Okay. And you can choose. On this sock that I did before, I know that this is a big sock. I did the decreases every row, and it comes more narrow quite quickly. But if you want to keep this instep of the foot a bit bigger for a bit longer time, or you're making a big sock, you can also choose to make this decreases every other row. But then you have to kind of pay attention that, 1 row of just knitting and then 1 row of doing this and so forth. So maybe on the first sock, you do the decreases every row. So let's do the first decreases. Everything else is just knitting. So once you've picked up those stitches for this part, you're basically more than halfway home from your sock. So then we start knitting. And sorry for this old phone of mine, trying to keep up with where should it be focusing. So you knit, knit, knit. Just knit. Now you don't need to pay attention to anything twisting anymore because you took care of that on the earlier one. Sorry for that one needle trying to get into the way. Let's try it this way. Now I have 4 stitches left, 1 more. And now I have 3 stitches left. On this side, I will just regularly, sorry for hitting the camera, knit them together, just like that. Knit the 2 stitches together and knit the last one totally regularly. Okay, and then continue these 2 needles, just regular knitting. Knit while I knit. More yarn needed. I don't know about you, but I basically just love these just plain gray, or now there's some beautiful like pale pinks in the yarn stores, you can go to regular, in Finland you can buy yarn from the supermarkets, so you can even go to regular, in Finland everybody knows Sale, ass markets, you can buy a skein of yarn. Okay, now we're on this other long needle, so heel needle, and here we knit the first one just regular like that, but then the 2 next ones you can knit them from the back. So you put the needle inside these both stitches, but to the back, and then you knit it from there, and that turns the stitch towards left, and then you knit the rest of them regular. Okay, keep at this until you, and pay attention, until you have the same amount of stitches on these heel needles as you have on the other. So 12 stitches should remain on each needle. Happy knitting! Okay, so decrease is done. I have 12 stitches on each and every needle. So the sock construction is visible. You can see how the heel is there. And all you need to do now is knit. If you want to, if you know that the sock is going to a person who has a narrow foot or, you know, a petite foot, you can reduce the amount of stitches a couple more times and make the foot a bit more narrow than the leg part, but kind of try it on, see. Normally it doesn't matter even though there's a couple more stitches here. So very often the socks are made so that there's exactly the same amount of stitches here in the leg as there is in the foot of the sock. So basically all that you need to do now is keep at it from the heel, and this is just knitting, knitting, knitting until one of the instructions is that until the sock, when you try it on, covers your pinky toe. Well, we all have different toes and fingers, so if your pinky toe is really short, here are my fingers, but if your pinky toe is really short, once that is covered, then you would have quite a bit of way still to go to the top of the foot. Or if your pinky toe is almost the same length as the others, once you get to cover the pinky toe, then you're almost at the top of the, so kind of, you know, just leave a, let's say, how much is here? This is a big sock, so it's hard to measure, but let's say 3 centimeters to the tip of the toes. Okay, happy knitting. Okay, now I've kept knitting the stockinette, and as you can see, it's from the back of the heel to the, I don't know if you can see this, but to the front of the foot, it's now 20 centimeters. Here's 20. So 20 centimeters is the length, at least for my 38, 39 foot, before I start the decreases here at the toes. And how I like to, or let's do it this time, is that this is a sock, the earlier one that I showed you, from the top and then from the bottom. And as you can see, there are these kind of like stitches leaning to the left, and then there are stitches leaning to the right on each side, and the same thing here, and that then reduces the number of the stitches until there's a certain amount left. And if we look from the bottom, from the center of the heel, so if we look at this and we think that this is our first needle here, this would be our second needle. So on the first needle, exactly the same way as we did for the heel decreases, the 3 stitches at the end of the needle, the second last and the third last, are knit together, then 1 regular stitch, then turn to the next needle. The first one is a regular stitch. The second and the third stitch are knit together from the back of the stitch, and then you knit the rest of the needle. That was needle 1 at the end, knit 2 together, knit. Needle 2 at the beginning, knit 1, knit 2 together from the back of the stitch, and knit to the end of the needle. And then comes the needle 3, and it's the repeat of the 1 and 2. So needle 3, knit to the end of the needle, last 3 stitches. The third and the second last, knit 2 together, knit 1, and then the fourth needle, knit 1, knit 2 together from the back of the stitch, and knit the rest of the stitches. And you keep doing that until you have 5 stitches on each needle. So needle number 1 from the heel, I start, so the heel, this is the one that I start from. So the heel, center of the heel is the beginning of the round. So knit through this needle all the way to the last 3 stitches. So I still have 5. Now I have 3 stitches left. So these 2, I will loosen this up a little, and then I will knit these 2 together. Like so, it leans to the right, and knit the last stitch. That was the first needle. And then the second needle, we're at the side of the sock. So this will be knit 1. Let's put that needle out of the way. Knit 1, and then knit 2 together from the back of the stitches. So stretching them 2 stitches a bit, going to the back of them, and then knitting together. Hold on, let me get the camera to focus. Knitting together from the back of the stitches like so. So it leans to the left. You also can do an SSK, slip, slip, knit from the back if you'd like. And then knit to the end of the needle. Again, so this was the needle number 2. So then we get to the needle number 3. We're at the top of the sock here. So that is our needle number 3. Pull that out of the way a bit too. So we need to do the decreases on the left side of the sock. So we knit all the way this needle until the last 3 stitches are left. Again, I'm checking when there's about 5 stitches left there. So these ones at the end, I want them to lean right. So I am knitting them together like this. Just regular knit them together. Knit 1, the last stitch, and then the needle number 4. So we are headed to the back of the heel. So this is the needle number 4, and this one is right next to the other one that just had decreases. So knit 1 and then knit 2 together from the back of the stitches. There we go. And then continue knitting. And you keep doing this. So that you have at the end of the first one, beginning of the second one, end of the third one, beginning of the fourth one, you keep doing these decreases until you have 5 stitches on each needle. Happy knitting! Here we are. We have the decreases on the sides. The sock stands up. It looks like a foot. And you have to check this so that it doesn't happen to be so that if you followed the instructions, it should be like this, that it looks like a foot like this. And you have 5 stitches on each needle, and we're soon done with the sock. Now what you can do is your yarn, working yarn, should be in the middle of the heel still. So when I go to the middle of the heel, go to this part here, my working yarn is right there. That's where I finished off when I had 5 on each side. But now I've had these decreases and these knit togethers on this previous row. So to make it nice for the ending of the sock, I'm going to knit this 1 needle, just knit. And now I have the working yarn after this. I have it on the side of the sock. And now one thing that I want to do is I want to knit 1 round, 1 full round, finish here on the side of the sock, and at the same time just have these stitches on 2 needles. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. And when I hit those places where we've knit 2 together from the back, I will knit them from this direction to kind of twist the stitch. Not necessary if you don't want to do that, but I'll show you how to do it. okay, the first needle, one, and because this was knit from the back, I will knit this one also from the back, so it goes the kind of turns the same way. Hold on, sorry. So now I have those two. Then I knit regular the rest of them. So 4, 5. I remove this needle totally and keep working on the same needle. This is the top of the foot to work on this needle. It's getting a bit fidgety because there's going to be less needles on this work. So 1, 2, 3, and this one just regular because it leans to the right. 5, and now I have 10 stitches on this top of the foot. Then I will work on these stitches that are on the back. Starting from this one. So 1, and this next one was knit from the back, so I'm going to just also knit that from the back. 2, 3, 4, 5, and not changing the working needle. I'm just going to remove this needle from my hand, and I'm going to continue with the last needle that has stitches here. So it's going to be 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. There we go. So we have only 2 needles on this sock anymore, and you should have this kind of a flat thing at the end with 10 stitches on both. Now, if you want to make sure that this sock now fits you, try it on and see that you can kind of hold these needles together and the sock fits good for you. If it doesn't, you can rip back this and start the decreases later, or you can decide that this is a smaller sock, give it to someone else, make the other one exactly the same, give it to someone else, and make your next one a bit longer. But anyhow, you can try it on now to make sure before you finish it. And then get yourself a needle, threading needle, and scissors, and then we can continue. So what we're going to do is Kitchener stitch this end together. Once it is done, it looks like the edge of this, so it doesn't look like there's much of anything at the end. Those stitches kind of just in the middle, they just continue. You can't really tell where that edge was particularly. There's a color change here so that you can kind of tell, but hey. So how much yarn would you need? It's always said that you need 3 times kind of the length of what you're doing. And I always, just in case, make a little extra. So what I do is I go 3 times around. 1, 2, hold on, getting stuck. 3 times around and a bit of extra. And this is from where I cut the yarn. And then put the yarn, thread the yarn through a needle and start stitching. So the thing is that for this Kitchener stitch, it is widely known stitch. It has probably different nicknames. Some people just call, what do they say when they do this? I don't remember, but the main thing is that when you start Kitchener stitch, you have to have the same amount of stitches on both needles. So it's a good time to check that it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and always kind of in the middle of it all, you can check, do you have the same amount of stitches on both needles? Because if you skip something, you might do something weird. It has 4 steps. And we start with the steps 3 and 4. We always think that there's like 2 stitches that we're working on. 2 stitches on the front needle and 2 stitches on the back needle. Let's take that box away. It kind of tries to focus on that. That one too, sorry. So In the front, you always go, your direction is from the center out. So you go to the center of those 2 stitches, you go from there to the right, so out, and then you come back to the center of the stitches and you go to the left. Then you work on the back stitches, and because they are the back stitches, you go from outside in. So the back stitches, you go from outside in, so from right to left, you go to the center, and once you've gone from here, you again go from outside into the center. So on the front, you're working on these 2 stitches from center to out. From the back, you're working on 2 stitches from outside to in to the center. And those are the 4 steps. But to begin this, you always start with the steps 3 and 4. They're kind of the preliminary stitches. So there's an imaginary side stitch here on the side that we don't see now. So this is kind of like beginning. So only to these 2 steps to start it. From here inside, and make sure you go through the loop and not through the yarn, so that we don't stick into the yarn. So like that. And then you go to the back needle. You can thread the yarn here so that it doesn't get mixed up. And then you go from left to right on that stitch. And then we're ready to begin the actual Kitchener stitch. So those are the preliminary steps. So in the front, from center out. So 2 stitches from center to the right and back to the center and to the left. And then, oops, my yarn is getting twisted somewhere. And then drop the first stitch, just the first one. Drop it off like that and pull the yarn. You've gone through it twice now, so it's fine, you can drop it. Then go to the back stitches, and remember, from outside in. So you can go from outside in, and then from outside in. Make sure that you don't split the yarn, but you go through the actual loop. And then drop again the first stitch before you go to the front needle. And it's a good point to always tuck the yarn a little and see that you have the same amount of stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 when you continue. So the steps 1 and 2, from center to out, from center to the right, and from center to the left on the front needle. And once the front needle is done, you can drop the first stitch. Come on, there. Then you can pull back. This is a good idea to always pull back your needles a bit so that you don't drop stitches while you're working on the other needle. On the back needle, from the outside to in, so from right to left, and then from left to right. Make sure you don't split the yarn. And then drop the first, oh, wrong needle. Ooh. Drop the first stitch from the back. Make sure you only drop 1. Pull the needle back into the place. Check you have 8. 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. Great. And you continue doing this and make sure you do it slow. So in the front, it's from the center to the right. And you can even do so that do the right, drop the stitch. Might be easier to go to the left, like this. On the back, from outside, so you go from the right in. Drop the stitch, and remember to do the other one from the outside in, so from left to right. Okay. The order is important. It is important that you keep doing this. My poor camera. That you keep doing this in the right direction. So front, right, from left to right. Drop the first from right to left. So from center to that direction. Pull needle in place. And then on the back stitch, back stitches. Remember to go from outside in, so the first one goes from right to left. The yarn could be pulled from, so it goes under the needle more tightly, and then drop the stitch. And then the fourth step from left to right on the back needle. There. And before going to the front, 2, 4, 6 on the front back, 2, 4, 6 in the front. I'll keep at this once I get to the last stitches. Okay, here I am with the last couple of stitches. So I've just finished the step 4 on the back, coming to the front needle, going through this one from center out, so from left to right, and dropping that stitch. There we go. Entering this one from center to out, so from right to left. Be careful not to drop that stitch yet. Then going to work on the back side, going from outside to in, so from right to left, and dropping that stitch off. And then working really carefully, holding on to these needles, because now I need to come from outside to in, so from left to right through that stitch. And actually some people say that that is enough. You don't need to go through those again, but I like to finish it with just one more time. So I just do the first steps from like as if this was the one that I was working with now. So from left to right on the front, then I drop the front needle totally, let it drop on the table, maybe it makes a loud sound. And then here from outside, so it's from right to left to this part. And then I can drop that. Now when I put my hand in here, into the sock, I can see that it bulges a bit. It's a bit of this like a nub at the end. So I use my needle to kind of check out a place where I can kind of tuck it down a bit. See it like this, tap it down with your fingers. And see that where the yarn comes out from, that you don't go back the same way, but you tie it down, for example, here. And then maybe another time, let me focus, please. Maybe another time that you come from somewhere close by, back up, and do this again to it, and then enter the needle to the other side, to the inside of the sock. Pull it with the hand that you have inside. Looks pretty good. And then the edge of the sock, see, can't really tell. That's the beauty of the Kitchener stitch. It just kind of continues over the, if you keep at the lefts and rights and everything, it just kind of has that at the end. Okay, then you turn the sock around, and the one that you have to still finish is you just kind of thread in this last piece of yarn, this one. And what I normally do is I look at where there is a place to go. So you can go anywhere underneath the yarn, but I normally try to do it so that I just go under one thread at a time and then over the next one, so that it doesn't show on the other side so well. So for example, under here, over, under. This is a good ridge to kind of fill with yarn, because it seems like there's a bit of air in there. So that's what I do. Come to the, hold on, come to the finish somewhere there. That's too much at the same time. There. And once I get to the other side, just kind of turn back and come back the same way. Just kind of make sure that I don't start from the same hole back, so that it doesn't rip back. So that I go over that one piece of yarn that I came under. So I come over that one and maybe split the yarn a bit, so that it really tucks it in place using the same canal. And then you can keep doing this for a couple of different directions to make sure that it's, and you can check from the other side that it's not visible. And then once you're happy that it's in a couple of places here, just cut the yarn and you're done with the sock. Congratulations! Please show me your sock. Marina and Natalia and Tatiana and Alina and Dima. Did I mention Dima? Dima is working on the socks too. And Anya and everyone, please keep sending me the pictures of the socks, WhatsApp or whichever way. Okay. Love you much. Talk to you soon.